All right, great. Well, thank you all for joining us here today. If we have not met before, my name is Ryan Cirillo, and I am the program lead for the City of Chicago's TOPA program, Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act. Um, and so we're here today because DOH wants to make sure that owners and real estate agents understand what's expected of them in TOPA transactions and also are conversant in what TOPA is exactly. Um, so I will go ahead and kick things off. So I have a couple of goals today. The first one being that I want to inform attendees of the basics of TOPA, such as what the purpose of TOPA is, where it applies in the city, stuff of that nature. I also want to be able to give you all an outline of TOPA transactions so that, again, you understand the timelines that are built into it. I'd also like to bring attention to the recent changes to TOPA. For those of you who may have been familiar with the TOPA program for some time, uh, in April, we did make a couple of adaptations to the program to make it a little more intuitive. And we're also hoping to have plenty of time for questions as well. So please make sure that you're saving those till the end. We will have ample time, I promise you. Um, well, I will go ahead and get started then with an overview of TOPA in general. So TOPA, it was first launched in early 2025. It was only the Northwest Side TOPA at that point in time. And the purpose of TOPA was to counter displacement and preserve affordability in rapidly changing Northwest Side neighborhoods. Um, Specifically by expanding the opportunity for home ownership to long-term tenants in the area. You'll see that Jackson Park is highlighted here, and that's just because Jackson Park was rolled out in April of 2026, whereas the 606 district has been in effect since March of 2025. Um, both ordinances were, or excuse me, both programs were enabled by ordinances that were part of a larger package of housing related policy. So, for example, the Northwest Side Housing Preservation Ordinance also created a demo surcharge program, and the Jackson Park Housing Pilot Ordinance also created a debt relief program. Um, but for today, we'll just be getting into TOPA. Though I absolutely recommend if either of those programs sound interesting to you, definitely take a look at the ordinance. So this is a map of the 606 district. As you can see, it cuts into several different community areas on the northwest side. You'll see that it includes parts of West Town, specifically the East Humboldt Park part of West Town, north of Division, Humboldt Park, Hermosa, Logan Square, and Avondale. One thing I want to note here is that the boundaries are not inclusive of both sides of the street. So, for example, you'll see that Addison Street is the northernmost boundary of the district. Properties that are located to the north of Addison are not covered by TOPA, whereas properties covered to, properties located to the south of Addison are covered by TOPA. So just keep that in mind since I know there are many properties on Western Addison, some of these streets that are that make up the boundaries. So this is the Jackson Park District, a little easier to look at if I do say so myself. So this one is bound by 60th on the north, MLK and South Chicago on the west, 71st Street on or to the south, and the Lake Shore to the east. And just like the last one, uh, again, the boundaries do not include both sides of the street. So only properties south of 60th or north of 71st. So TOPA applies to properties that are covered by, or excuse me, TOPA only applies to properties that are currently occupied by residential tenants. So there are three pieces in there: currently occupied, residential, and tenants. So uh, properties that would not be covered by TOPA would be vacant properties, uh, properties that are solely commercial, and properties that are only occupied by the owner. These are not covered by TOPA, though I will say that multifamily buildings that are currently occupied by tenants, there are few exemptions within that. So I can walk through a couple of exemptions for you, although there are, I believe, about 9 or 10. The most notable ones, or the ones that come up the most often, are buildings that are managed by the Chicago Housing Authority. One thing that I do want to note here is that buildings that are managed by CHA are not the same as buildings that have tenants on vouchers. So tenants on vouchers are still covered by TOPA. Buildings that are undergoing foreclosure and bankruptcy sales. These are also not covered by TOPA. Foreclosure sales, they are first sold to a bank and then go up for sale again. So that first sale to the bank is not covered by TOPA. But then when a member of the public can buy it again, it would be a TOPA transaction. Um, as I mentioned, this is not the full list of exemptions. So if you'd like to take a closer look and see if your property might be exempt, you can look at sections 510.040 for Jackson Park or 511.040 for the 606 district. So now I'll just get into a bit about what TOPA does. In a word or in a sentence, I would say that TOPA grants tenants the right of first refusal if they live in the 606 or Jackson Park districts. Um, Now, if you're not familiar with the right of first refusal, what that means is tenants have the first opportunity to purchase the building if they're able to match an offer that was put forth on the private market. So the way that this works is tenants are given advance notice. It'll be 30 days for all properties located or for all properties with four or fewer housing units and 60 days for properties that have five or more housing units. Um, Once that advance period has expired, uh, the property can be listed by the owner. Once the owner has listed and they receive an offer that they intend to accept, the tenants may try to match the material terms of that third party purchase offer. They can either do so as an individual if there are only one or two units on the property. If there are three or more units on the property, they have to do it as a part of a tenant association. So a note there, let's say that a tenant on a three in a three flat decides that they want to purchase the property alone, they're still able to. It just wouldn't be a right of first refusal purchase, and that means that the owner would not be obligated to sell to them first because they don't have the right of first refusal or that first opportunity. Um, Residents are then, I should say, tenants are then given a period to secure financing and fully close on the property once they've expressed an interest in exercising their right of first refusal. And another thing to note is that tenants can also transfer the right of first refusal to a third party if they cannot exercise that purchase. So that third party could be a nonprofit that's mission driven and seeks to keep the property affordable in the long term, or it could be a private owner that seeks to do the same. So, getting now into what waiving one's right of first refusal entails, if a tenant does this, it basically means they're giving up. It means that they're giving up their right to purchase the property before the owner can offer it to someone else, or, and it also means that they are giving up their right to transfer their property to a third party as well. Now, waiving a tenant's right of first refusal is typically pretty official, though I will say that there are two circumstances where actually, if a tenant waives their right of first refusal, then the right of first refusal can be reinstated. The first one is if the sale price of the property is a 10% decrease or more from the original price that they listed it as. And this is just because a tenant association may not be able to buy a $1 million property, for example, but they might be able to execute a purchase if it's $900,000. It's just that that margin is different enough that we give tenants that second chance. The other circumstance where a right of first refusal can be reinstated is if there's a new offer. So let's say an offer on the property falls through after you've already presented the tenants with that offer. The tenants say, "No, thank you. I'm waiving my right of first refusal." But then in that offer, the potential buyer drops out and a new offer comes forward, then their right of first refusal will be reinstated and they'll have the same opportunity to either say, I'm interested in exercising or waiving. Um, One last piece I want to note here is that waiving your right of first refusal can happen at any time during the process, but landlords are not allowed to ask tenants specifically to waive their right of first refusal, and they're certainly not allowed to coerce tenants from waiving their right of first refusal. Um, One situation that would be okay, let's say the landlord runs into a tenant on the property. They're allowed to ask, "Hey, I know I gave you that notice of intent to sell recently. Have you given any thought to what you might want to do with your right of first refusal?" Now, the tenant is not obligated to respond if they don't wish to, but you're allowed to ask. But something that would not be allowed is if the landlord specifically says, "I would like for you to waive your right of first refusal," or if you don't waive your right of first refusal, then X. So hopefully that's clear. Um, for those of you who may have been aware of the TOPA process for a little while, I just want to note that we did make some edits to the TOPA form specifically, and then also a couple of other pieces of the process. This was a pretty major undertaking, but one that, we received a lot of feedback from stakeholders, and we distilled that feedback, took it seriously, and decided to relaunch. So I'll walk through each of these pieces in a bit more detail later. The first one being that we created a more efficient submission process. The second one being that we redesigned the forms to clarify instructions and to clarify the responsibilities of the property owners versus the tenants, with the goal of making program compliance a little bit easier to attain. The third one is that for tenants who express an interest in exercising their right of first refusal, there's now a resource guide on all of the forms that they receive. The fourth one is that we now have forms translated into six different languages. More on that later. Um, but the overarching theme of these that I want to make sure you're all aware of is that the ordinance, the timelines, and the rules that you have to abide by have not fundamentally changed, though we've made some tweaks to the overall process and clarified some ambiguities that were in the ordinance as well. So I'll now get into what the forms that a person has to complete in order to be TOPA compliant are. The first one is called the Notice of Intent to Sell. This was initially something that we put in one form, um, but we have since split it into two different documents. And the first one is called the Notice of Owner's Intent to Sell, and the second is called the Owner Declaration. The former is to be given by the property owner to each housing unit and then sent along to DOH, basically just as an FYI saying, "Hey, the property is going up for sale in 30 to 60 days. This is your notice period." Now, the latter, the owner declaration, that basically just gives DOH general information about the property, such as how many units are on the property, who's the owner, um, and then we use that to determine timelines. So, for example, a building with 4 units will have different timelines than a building with 5 units. Um, we did also remove the waiver from this document and added it to the notice of third-party purchase agreement. Again, like I mentioned earlier, tenants are allowed to waive their right of first refusal at any point. Um, but we took it off of the notice of intent to sell just to make sure that tenants recognize that they can take as much time as they want during the notice period and they don't need to give an immediate response. Uh, Now, the last piece is that the owner side, the owner declaration, now has some attestations basically affirming that owners understand some key pieces of the TOPA process and can be held liable if they're not being followed. So, again, the overarching themes here are just sort of clarifying responsibilities and making sure that everyone has symmetrical information. So, I'm now going to show you what the documents actually look like. So the one on the left is the owner declaration. This is the document that does not go to the tenants, but instead goes directly to DOH. You'll see the instruction guide at the top in blue and some pretty basic information about the property, the owner, the address, the number of units, all listed here, as well as how you plan to list the property for sale. You'll see on the right is the notice of owner's intent to sell. This is the document that you'll provide to tenants, notifying them that their 30 to 60-day period has begun. So again, you'll see the instructions in blue, um, and it will give a pretty rudimentary overview of uh, what this notice period means to the tenants and what their options are. And another form that I'm going to go into, the third and final form for TOPA compliance, is the Notice of Third-Party Purchase Agreement. So what this document does is it informs each unit of the exact terms that they would need to meet of the third-party purchase offer that their owner received on the market. So whereas the Notice of Intent to Sell says your property is going to be listed on August 1st and it's going to be listed for 700,000, the notice of third party purchase agreement will say, we received an offer. The offer is for $675,000 with an earnest money deposit of X. And then that way, the tenants or tenant association, they know exactly what terms that they would need to match in order to exercise their right of first refusal. And that's why the waiver has been moved to this document, because again, with the notice of intent to sell, tenants don't know exactly what terms they need to meet. Um, but at this step, they can more they can make a more informed decision about what their intentions are with their right of first refusal. Um, there is a period at which the tenants need to respond to the notice of third party purchase agreement. If there are 1 to 2 units, they have 15 days. If there are 3 to 4 units, they have 30. If there are 5 or more units, they have 90 days. And if the tenants do not respond or do not indicate that they have any interest in exercising their right of first refusal at these timelines, then their right of first refusal is considered waived and you can move forward with the third party purchaser. So once again, here are these forms, or this form, excuse me, the notice of third party purchase agreement. Again, instructions listed at the top. Um, you'll need one to be addressed to each housing unit. And then the second page, or excuse me, I believe this is actually the third page, is pictured on the right here. And the reason why this is why I included this in the slide is because this is where tenants will acknowledge that the process has been done correctly, that they received the notice of intent to sell, they'll sign. And if they wish to waive their right of first refusal, then they can also do that on the third page. You'll see the option to waive your right of first refusal on the lower half of the page. All they have to do is put their name, sign in date, and then their right of first refusal is considered waived. And on top of that, I also just want to note that if your tenant wants to waive their right of first refusal before this period, you're more than welcome to print out this page um, so that they can sign off whenever they please. So here's an outline of the TOPA process. This would just be a review of the last couple of slides that I've been going through. Um, you'll provide the notice of owner's intent to sell to each unit 30 to 60 days in advance, 60 days if there are 5 or more housing units. You'll list the property publicly when the 30 to 60 day period expires. Once an offer is received, the owner gives the notice of third-party purchase agreement to each housing unit alongside a copy of the sale contract and the financial disclosures that are on the notice of third-party purchase agreement. And at that point, the tenants decide that they either want to exercise, waive, or transfer their right of first refusal. And if they're interested in exercising their right of first refusal, they will need to provide the necessary financial assurances, which I believe in this case would be a letter from a pre-approval letter, excuse me, from a financial institution. Um, and then finally, the owner either moves forward with the tenant purchaser if they choose to exercise their right of first refusal, or if they decide to neither exercise nor transfer their right of first refusal, then a third party purchaser that is not affiliated with the tenants. Or if the tenants decide to transfer their right of first refusal, then you'll move forward with whoever they choose to transfer their right to. All right, so getting into how to submit TOPA forms. There is a submission portal that we set up. Previously, we were using email as the primary method of collecting these documents from everybody, and we found that it was a little bit difficult to document and collect all of this data and keep everyone's profile keep all of their documents together. And so the portal has definitely helped in that respect. The portal does also allow for quicker responses too. Um, I will note here that for people with limited technological literacy, we are still allowing submissions via the portal, or excuse me, via email. And that email is going to be in this slide deck as well. And we are going to email these slides out to everyone who registered. Oop. Um, we did also change the website to correspond with some of the programmatic changes we made. One thing that I absolutely recommend everyone here do is if they know that they're going to be doing a TOPA transaction, go to the website first and foremost because all of the forms that are needed to complete a TOPA transaction are going to be on the website. There are also a handful of other helpful resources and the portal that you'll use to submit your materials also on the website. So our hope is that this website will be kind of a one-stop shop that can achieve everything that can help you achieve a TOPA transaction, hopefully with minimal problems. Um, We did also expand language access by requiring that Spanish or that forms are submitted in both English and Spanish, specifically the tenant-facing forms. So you'll notice here that the owner declaration, the one that goes directly to DOH, you only need to submit that one in English. Um, but the documents that are going to be going to the tenants, uh, there's already a PDF on the website of each of these forms. So you don't have to do work either translating it by yourself or trying to hunt down a separate Spanish copy. It's already in there. And that's also, again, on the website. Um, we recognize that you may have tenants that speak neither English nor Spanish as their primary language. In that scenario, we just ask that you make a good faith inquiry into what language your tenant is most proficient in and would prefer. We have a couple of our core languages here, Arabic, Chinese, French, Polish, and Tagalog. Um, so those are already translated and ready for you to go. Um, but if a tenant speaks neither English nor Spanish nor any of those core languages that I just listed, you can let us know at doh.tenantpurchase. That's an email. It'll be on the slide deck. Um, we'll translate it for you, but please do note that tenants' timelines do not start until they've received their documentation in their preferred language. So if you know off the bat that you have a tenant that speaks none of those languages fluently, um, I would maybe think ahead and request a translation into their preferred language sooner rather than later. We do here have a couple of additional resources for you. One thing that I always recommend is reviewing the Municipal Code of Chicago. Section 5-10 is for the Jackson Park program, and 5-11 is for the 606 program. Um, the ordinance answers a lot of questions. It's a legal document, so it's a bit dense, but I think you'll find a surprising amount of the questions that you may have are answered by the ordinance, though also we'll be doing a Q&A here too. Um, like I mentioned, the website chicago.gov/TOPA will include everything you need to do a TOPA transaction. Uh, we do also have a rules document that clarifies any ambiguities in the ordinance as well. We also have an FAQ that I'm realizing I did not advertise under additional learning, and we'll have a step-by-step guide coming out in about a couple of weeks to a month. Um, and like I mentioned, if there are any questions that you can't answer with any of the above resources, we are always happy to take emails as well. That email is doh.tenantpurchase@cityofchicago.org. I would just ask that you maybe look through additional resources before emailing, given the high volume of requests that we get at that email address. But with that, I think we are good to go ahead and start our Q&A. Um, so I will stop sharing for a second, although I'm happy if anyone has any questions on the slides, happy to share again. Um, but let's get started.